So you're thinking of moving to the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Well, like my mother used to say, just hold on to your shirt. It's not all rainbows and bunny rabbits in the great Midwest states of Minnesota and Wisconsin. There are some negatives, especially if you're coming from New York, Illinois, California, Washington State, Texas, or Colorado. This is where some of the relocation clients we're working with are coming from. There is a little bit of a culture shock, and we do want you to know some of the negatives ahead of time. That way you can be well prepared when considering living in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. So without further ado, let's get to it. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about living in the Minneapolis-St. Paul, Minnesota and surrounding areas, then subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to learn about the current market conditions in the Minneapolis, Minnesota and surrounding areas. Well, my name is Troy, and you know my team and I, we get calls, texts, and emails every single day from people just like you looking to make their move to the Minneapolis, Minnesota and surrounding areas, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're planning to move in 3 days or 3 months, shoot us a text, send us an email, better yet, schedule a Zoom call in the description below. We're always happy to help you make a smooth move to, from, or around the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. So there definitely are some very beautiful times of year here in the Midwest, but you know, when it's cold, and when it's hot. So right now it's pretty cold. The good news is the extreme weather doesn't last for long, but it definitely does exist, and it's something you should take into consideration. In my opinion, I would say 90% of the time the weather in the Midwest is actually pretty gorgeous. I love the change of seasons. It's nice to be able to put on a nice winter coat, sometimes put on a nice flannel shirt, but as you can see, we've definitely got some snow out here today. So if you've lived in many different states, you probably have seen some of the different weather. We've had people move up here from Boston, even Canada, and some of these places where it's 30 degrees all the time and pretty bearable. You know, here it can get 20 below for a stretch at a time, but I guess that's no different than, you know, maybe 110 in Arizona or some of the other warmer states. So weather here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul and surrounding areas is decent, definitely decent most of the time, but it can definitely be cold too. So anyway, that's the weather. Well, one thing to add to the weather detail too is that November, December, January kind of time frame, the days do get really short, and I brought it back down here into the studio because as I was outside, as you could probably see, it's only about 4:30 right now, 4:45 in the afternoon, and it's already starting to get really dark out. So I couldn't really do much more outside, and that's okay because it was cold and snowy and windy anyway, but just wanted to add that onto the weather detail. All right, well, the second thing is our property taxes here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul, Minnesota area. I mean, a lot of people are coming from areas where property taxes are much higher than in Minnesota or Wisconsin, but it's definitely a concern. Now, the bright side to this is that most people that live here feel like they're getting something for that property tax, such as excellent schools, roads, municipality services such as emergency services, you know, hospitals, police and fire, things of that nature. Another thing with property taxes is that with the market skyrocketing the last few years, there are things you can do to counteract those taxes if you feel like they're out of whack. So you can contact me directly if you'd like a few ideas on that. All right, well, the next thing on my list is the bugs. You know, we got people coming from California where it's like the land of the perfect and everything, you know, but we get June bugs, mosquitoes, box elder bugs, Asian beetles. You know, they're not dangerous or too crazy or anything, but they can certainly be a nuisance. So that's something to take into consideration when you're moving to the metro area. All right, well, next up on our list, the thing I hear people complain about, I don't personally have any issues with it, but it's the allergies from pollen. So I've never had allergies. I don't really deal with it too much. My brother and some other family members complain about having allergies like twice a year. I think it's from the pollen. Most of the time we have pretty clean air quality. There's not a ton of pollution here in the Midwest. You know, you get out in nature, I think it's pretty clear and clean, but but the pollen and the allergies are something that I do hear people complain about, so something to consider. All right, well, the next one I think is traffic. Now, traffic has gotten better in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area over the last 20 years because of the infrastructure has been continually worked on and updated. But of course, there's always a lot of people moving to the metro area, so we do have traffic, just like every other municipality or metro area. But I was in LA about 3 weeks ago, and it took me 30 minutes to get about 5 miles, so it's certainly not as bad as LA. All right, well, next up on the list is probably utilities. Now, there are only a few select electrical companies up here in the Midwest as compared to like Texas, where there's literally hundreds of different utility companies. There's only a few gas and electric choices to choose from, and that can make things a little monopolized when it comes to pricing. Of course, tons of different options for garbage and other services such as that, but we are a bit limited on gas and electric providers. Well, next on the list, I would think kind of would be weather related, I guess, would be hail. So we do get hail. It does happen usually a couple times a year, depending on the weather patterns and temperatures, of course, and what's going on in the atmosphere. But usually every spring we do see a couple of hail events. Sometimes throughout the summer we'll see one or two, but yep, hail's definitely got to be on the list for one of the negatives. All right, well, next would be that Minnesota nice. Are people friendly? Well, like anywhere, I guess there's nice people and not so nice people. I've heard sometimes people say Minnesota ice instead of Minnesota nice, and there is some truth to that depending on where you are and who you're talking to, of course. There's a lot of transplants and people from all over the world living here in the metro area, but for the most part, I would say people here in the Minneapolis and St. Paul and surrounding areas are quite pleasant and friendly and kind and decent, that type of people. I rarely run into people who are rude or don't take the time to wave or hold a door or something, so that's a good thing. You definitely want to have some nice people in the areas that you're living in. Yeah, so that really kind of wraps up this video on what we've considered to be some of the downsides to living in Minneapolis, but I guess just like any place else that you're going to be, there's always going to be some kind of negatives. However, if you look at the positives, there is a bright side and something that balances all that out. So, I mean, I've lived here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area for most of my life, and I wouldn't be here if the bugs or the weather or the people was all that bad. So I think as I go over this information that a lot of these things you're going to encounter in other places too. So we just wanted to make you a little more prepared if you were considering a move to the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota or surrounding area. Yeah, so again, hope you found some value in this video, and please subscribe if you want to see more and hear more about the Minneapolis, St. Paul and surrounding areas of Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin. Feel free to connect with us. The information is below. Even if you just have questions, myself or someone on my team would love to help out. So until then, we hope to see you around town, and thanks for watching.